Now they're aware that civilization is a cancer and it's terminal, and we're seeing the end of the patient's life. And, crash landing or reabsorption into the primitive, return, whatever the case may be, we know with 6 billion people and plus, it's not going to be fun or easy. And it's going to probably include a lot of people dying. And I think we'd all want to avoid that because of the horrors that it'll cause and the trauma it'll cause to the human species. So I'm not sure how we go towards not just making people aware, but what can we do as rapidly as possible, I suppose, towards, like, I don't know, moving away from cities, like dropping out, so to speak, from industrialism, returning to the face-to-face, returning to the land in some fashion, we have this division, rural, urban, and this is a civilized invention, because before that it was just nature. There's no rurality and no urban. And I'm wondering, well, it's still nature, except, when I've heard people tell me, well, everything is natural. Well, in which case the Holocaust is natural, your child dying of completely preventable leukemias because of pollutants is natural, and that's absurd. It's not natural for me. It's a tragedy, and it's outrageous. So it isn't natural. We created artificial and the natural. The artificial is what is human-willed, what is human manipulated.
How many animals in the wild die of old age? Percentage?
They die of natural causes, whether it be
They
consumed
die
by
of
other animals.
disease, they die of violence, they die of
So
starvation.
what do human beings die? We die of the
Well,
same thing.
I'm saying, not everything in nature is pretty. To say that
Yeah.
something is not pretty, therefore it is not natural, is absurd.
I know.
But unlike our society, nature is complex, and this society is primitive because it just heeds one model, one style of living, one idea, and actually I have a problem with vocabulary. Primitive anarchy is actually, it's not primitivist, it's going out and looking for a variety of options, dying and living, whereas now we're just stuck in boxes in a very primitive existence, and there is no choice. And now it's like we're even saying, wow, it's inevitable, and it's now even natural, and it's not. It's avoidable, and it's not natural, and we can go towards complex anarchy.
Well, but what if complexity is so much of the problem, and I'm meaning not variety, but complexity in more of an anthropological sense of division of labor, where the individual is reduced and divided and narrowed, into roles, which seems to lead almost immediately to class society. In the real world, there's a real crunch that's already going on, which is pretty serious. And this isn't brand new. None of this stuff is brand new, of course. But there's starvation and food riots going on right now on several continents. And the new part of that, what has really caused the big jump in it as one factor is the search for biofuels. Is that now food resources are being turned to the different things that are grown for energy. And as somebody I know in Detroit said, I mean that is looked at as the green thing. How do we find renewable, green, and so forth sources of energy? But as she was pointing out, when you think about it slightly differently, what are all the things that probably should have never been done in the first place, and why do we want to keep doing them? So your people are starving to feed the machine, and a lot of people are not even thinking about why. I mean, what is it just so unquestioned that you've got to keep all of it going, and you've got to have the energy? That's certainly not the only way to look at it. Why? And it becomes pretty immediate because it's happening right now. So we sacrifice people on the bottom, people of color, almost entirely, to feed the machine, so we can live in a totally weird way.
How do you stop sort of the reemergence of state formations, and even earlier than that, how do you stop the immersion of things like of social forms which lead towards like lead towards various forms of domination as we see them. And yeah, I guess that's a pretty big open question I've been trying to reach around.
Well, you know, that's, people didn't know what the result is going to be until they do it. I mean, that's, but we, at least we have hindsight. In other words, that's just my hope, that we don't want to recycle the same thing and go all, you know, nor in maybe related to that is you could try to cut this off at an earlier point, but if those things are still operative, some of the deeper institutions that seem to drive it, then you're not really getting rid of it. You're just maybe that's a good, maybe it's positive, but it's not enough. You know, I think as you were saying. And some people raise a question along the lines of what you're saying. Well, how would you keep the memory alive if you want to really depart from everything? Then you don't have the literature of all this stuff. I mean, that's a more secondary question, but it's turned out so badly that I would think, well, we don't want to do that again, do we? I mean, who does? I mean, and I think the onus, one thing that gives me a little optimism is when you think about how, well, people will still be forced to do all these things. Well, it takes much more energy and resources and everything else to keep it going than not. And if there is a break, who's gonna pay the army and the cops and enforce everything? That'll be gone. I mean, you know, how are they gonna get people down in the mines? And there's no technology unless people are down in the mines and all the rest of it. The millions of people whose lives are consumed in grunt work in every possible way. The foundries and you know, warehouses and assembly lines, the whole thing that those of us who are more middle class don't see so much of. You see the nice clean computer which doesn't fall down from the sky. It's because there are factories, and you know, when we see the results, so you know, it starts to unravel, and it just leads to more questions. But you know, I think you bring up really good points on that. That's another key question, I would say.
I think the gentleman, yeah, you were the first one, yeah.
I came here cold tonight in the sense that I have not heard of you, had not heard of you, haven't read your books, and am just sort of gleaning what I can from the conversation. And maybe the question is inappropriate because maybe everybody knows this, but am I understanding correctly that you're using the term primitivism as a kind of shorthand for your thought? Or other people have used that term.
Right.
And I'm wondering, could you or maybe this is an unfair question, could you in a concise way tell me as a newcomer what your vision is, or what your thought would be? Is it something you could put on the T-shirt or not?
That takes a while to. Well, by the way, we have a free thing here. What is Green Anarchy? Which is one take on it. There's no official. This is. You know, there are certainly differences among ourselves.
I'm willing to be sent home to do my own homework too, but I just wondered if
no,
that's
I'm not trying to just get out of it, but well, I think, and it did become as kind of a joke or a pejorative. Oh, primitivist, you know, and then, which is just another question, by the way, another problem. How do you avoid just becoming one more ideology? Oh, primitivism. Now we got primitivism. Well. No, we don't want that to happen either, and I think it's to try to stay open-ended and to have more questions than answers strikes me as healthy, not weak or incomplete necessarily. You know, so, but I think it's probably the idea that all of these things we've taken for granted are really coming to, you know, the painful. End or exposure of what it's really about, what it really delivers, and that if there's going to be a future, it will probably have to be primitive. And I'm also aware that that has been a pejorative word. Primitive people are less. Of course, we reverse that, and we try to make that plain. That's the source of wisdom, not more.